My name is Margaret and I'm 81 years old. I've lived alone in Vermont for 12 years, ever since my son left me. People say old age is peaceful, but peace without love is just silence. And today I thought the silence would finally end. Margaret sat on a cold metal bench at the small train station in Vermont. It was early evening and the snow had started to fall again. Her long gray coat couldn't keep out the cold, and her old hands shook slightly as she held a photo. People around her were busy. A young couple hugged, children laughed, and a man spoke loudly on his phone. But Margaret sat alone. In her hand was a picture. It was faded and old. A young man with brown eyes smiled in the photo. Her son, David. Margaret had not seen David in 12 years. He left when he was 22. One day, he packed his things and said, "I need to leave, Mom. I need to find a life of my own." She asked him to stay, begged even. But he left. There were a few letters in the beginning. Then silence. Till every year on his birthday, she baked his favorite cake. Every Christmas, she placed a gift for him under the tree. Every night, she looked at the photo before going to sleep. Then, 1 week ago, a letter came. It was short. "Dear Mom, I'm coming back. I'll take the 6 p.m. train to Vermont on Tuesday. David." It was Tuesday now, 6 p.m. Margaret's heart was beating fast. She looked down the tracks. Train was late. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. 6:20, the train finally arrived. Her eyes searched each window. People got off. A woman with a suitcase. A man in a suit. Teenage girl with headphones. But no David. She stood up. Maybe he was inside. Maybe he didn't see her. She walked to each passenger. "Excuse me, are you David?" she asked a tall man. "No, ma'am." "David?" she asked a younger man with similar eyes. He shook his head. "Sorry." Platform was empty again. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. Maybe he missed the train. Maybe he would come tomorrow. Margaret waited another hour, then slowly walked home. The next day she came back, and the day after that. Each time she sat on the same bench, holding the same photo. Each time the train came, and each time David was not there. After a week, she stopped waiting at the station. Margaret's neighbors barely spoke to her. She was quiet and lived alone in her small house with a white fence. Her garden was full of dry leaves now. She didn't plant flowers anymore. One afternoon, while walking back from the store, she saw a boy sitting on her porch. Maybe 10 years old. Dirty shoes. A thin jacket. "Can I help you?" Margaret asked. I'm hungry," the boy said. She looked at him. His cheeks were red from cold. Without a word, she opened her door. "Come inside." The boy sat at her kitchen table. She made him soup and toast. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli." "Where are your parents?" He looked down. "I don't know." She didn't ask more. Eli came back the next day, and the next. Margaret gave him food, warm clothes, even a toothbrush. Soon he brought his little sister, Lily. She was only 6. tiny with bright blue eyes. Margaret didn't ask too many questions. She just let them stay. The house that was once full of silence was now full of noise. Laughter, footsteps, dishes clinking, the music on the radio. One night, Lily asked, "Are you our grandma now?" Margaret smiled. "Would you like me to be?" Lily nodded hard. Eli whispered, "Can we stay? We won't be trouble." Margaret looked at the photo of David on the wall. She took it down, placed it in a drawer, and hugged them both. "You're not trouble," she said. "You're family." Months passed. The house looked different now. Curtains were clean. Flowers bloomed in the garden again. Margaret laughed more, cooked more, lived more. Then, one spring morning, a knock came at the door. She opened it and froze. It was David. Older, taller, a little tired looking. "Hi, Mom." She didn't know what to say. He stepped inside slowly. I'm sorry. I missed the train that day. I got scared. I didn't know how to face you after all these years." Margaret looked at him. "You sent the letter. I waited. Every day." "I know. I thought about coming back so many times. But I was ashamed. I've done nothing with my life." She shook her head. "That doesn't matter. You're here now." Just then, Eli ran into the room. "Grandma, Lily spilled juice." He stopped. David looked at him. "Who's this?" Margaret paused. "This is Eli and his sister Lily. They've been living here. I took them in." David frowned. "You let strangers live here?" Margaret's voice was calm. "They needed a home, just like you once did." He looked around. The house had warmth, life, something he didn't expect. "I don't have a job, Mom," he said softly. "I'm lost." Margaret looked at him gently. "Then stay. Rest. Start again." David did stay. First he was quiet, unsure, but slowly he began to help around the house. He fixed the garden gate, painted the fence, took Lily to school. One evening, while setting the table, he said, "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me." Margaret smiled. Family doesn't give up, even when they break your heart. David looked down. "But sometimes," she continued, "family is not just blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them most." Eli looked up from his plate and said, "Like us?" Margaret nodded. "Exactly like you." And so, in a small town in Vermont, in a small white house with a garden full of flowers, a new family was born. Not from blood, but from love, kindness, and second chances.